The minute you start to mess around with the money, then what you attract is people into the money business that are criminals. And you attract a political class that prints money to benefit themselves, and you get cantillionaires like Charlie Munger and so forth. And you get people who figure out how to game the system at the expense of everybody else because they're closest to the cheap money, so to speak, the money spigot. And so the politics become corrupted, business becomes corrupted, all the incentives become corrupted, and you misallocate resources. In my opinion, unsound money is the base layer foundation of nearly all the problems that we have in the world today.
One of the most common sayings in the Bitcoin community is Bitcoin fixes this. Proponents of this saying believe that whatever problem the world faces right now stems from the intentional and complete corruption of money by the greedy ruling class. So, to permanently fix many of the world's problems, to even have a decent chance of beginning to make changes to what we've made of our world and planet, we first have to fix the money. The notion is quite simple. When the means via which human action is measured, stored, and transacted is outside of the hands of any group, organization, foundation, institution, or state, we have true equality of opportunity. This is from a 2021 article written by Alexander Svetski, the author of the Uncommunist Manifesto and founder of Amber, the world's first Bitcoin DCA app. In his article, Svetski describes Bitcoin as the most asymmetric economic opportunity any group of people will ever have had in the history of humanity. However, for the renowned author, investing in Bitcoin is not only about economic gains. He believes it's a moral duty for every one of us to move into Bitcoin to put an end to the tainted economic and financial system on which the world currently runs. In his article, Svetski describes the world's leaders and policymakers, regardless of ideologies or personal beliefs, as collective statists and central planners. Instead of working for the benefit of the many, they work to satisfy the greed of the few who have gorged on so much wealth and often ill-gotten gains that half of the world's net wealth belongs to the top 1%. The top 10% of adults hold 85%, while the bottom 90% are left to share the remaining 15%. Even crazier is the fact that 30% of the world's adult population holds 97% of the world's total wealth. When people realize this and that nothing is being done about the unfavorable system that makes it possible, it's easy for them to just give up. But where does that leave the next generation? The bottom line is our systems, financial, economic, and social, are not fair. We are not giving everyone equal opportunities from the starting point. We are not even getting near equal opportunities. That is the primary reason why these tainted systems need immediate fixing. The other reason is that the system is practically collapsing in on itself. A good example is the United States, which is the world's largest economy, yet is plagued with so many economic woes. Lawrence Lepard, an avid Bitcoin supporter and the founder and managing director of Equity Management Associates, recently had a discussion with the GoldRepublic channel. During the insightful and fascinating discussion, Lepard discussed the urgent need to move into Bitcoin, not just for economic gains, but to put a complete end to the existing fiat Ponzi. According to Lepard, we owe the next generations a better system that allows all individuals to rise based on their capacity, which cannot happen when the system has been rigged to satisfy the greed of the few. We will now bring you clips from the insightful discussion. Please watch the video to the end. It's not a discussion you want to miss. Also, ensure you subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and don't forget to drop your comments and observations in the comments section below. Everything you do helps with the YouTube algorithm and gets the video to more viewers. Thanks, and enjoy the video.
In my opinion, we're in a fourth turning, and that's a kind of a cyclical program described by Strauenhaus. And most people listeners have read the book. And the thing that I think is really most broken in our society is the money. And I think our grandkids will say, I can't believe they had a committee of 10 old people sitting around setting the interest rate. They didn't let the free market do it. It'd be akin to when I was a kid, the Politburo used to set the price of grain, and they set it too high. They had a lot of grain. If they set it too low, they didn't have any grain. And to me, the fact that the price of money is controlled by the state apparatus has just led to all kinds of perversions in the marketplace. And, it's led to inequality. It's led to wars. It's a bad thing in a lot of ways. And, if you actually look at the whole 20th century, of all the warfare and things that happened, in my opinion, a lot of those wars wouldn't have been doable without fiat money and the ability to create credit and the ability to print money, because governments would have been constrained in terms of their costs and what they could have spent. They'd have to spend what they actually brought in, and nobody would want to pay the taxes necessary to pay for the wars. So And if in turn, if you look at, the prior century, the 19th century and the 1800s, I mean, we had one nasty civil war in the United States. But other than that, around the world in general, as a general rule, the wars were much smaller and much less. We didn't have, World War II, which killed 50 million people. So I actually think sound money is a moral issue, and it goes back to the Bible even, sound weights and measures, honest weights and measures. In my opinion, unsound money is the base layer foundation of nearly all the problems that we have in the world today. And that if you were looking at one thing that you could fix, to make the world a better place, in my opinion, it would be to return to a sound money standard. And so, and I think there's a lot of evidence of that in studying history. And so, we need to do it. If we fix the money, we will fix the world. I think, a lot of Bitcoiners say, when somebody describes a problem in the world today and they say, Bitcoin fixes this. And it really kind of does, because it's a sound money standard. And a gold standard would help fix it too, although the gold standard has been broken because governments have figured out how to manipulate the price of gold. And I worry that they'll figure out how to manipulate the price of Bitcoin, but that's a different topic. But the point is that you can't build a society. I mean, prices are information, and information is what causes people to do what they're going to do. And information is what causes the proper allocation of resources. And the fact that we've corrupted the information means we've misallocated resources. And if you think about, from your point of view, my point of view, all of the advances, all the amazing technological advances that have occurred in the last 40 years, we all should be living much better lifestyles and working 30 hours a week. I mean, look at what the computer has done. Look at the fact that we're talking around the world here, on a video chat that would have required an airplane and a lot of time for us to have otherwise. I mean, these are amazing innovations. And as a result of these, we should all have a much higher standard of living, but we don't. Everyone's still kind of struggling. Most people are still kind of struggling to pay back their debt and or to beat the inflation monster, which continually debases what they earn and what they try to save. And the reason that's true is because the money's broken. And as my friend Jeff Booth so accurately points out, we've got a deflationary technology environment, and we've got a system, a Keynesian system, that by its very design requires inflation. It absolutely requires inflation, or else the system will implode. And so the conflict of those two things, that's what we're seeing coming to a head right here, right now.
Currently, there is a lot of focus on the U.S. debt ceiling drama, with a number of disastrous consequences hanging in the balance, and just a few days before disaster hits, investors are waiting with bated breath. But no one is focusing on the real problem: debt, and even more debt. During his interview, Lepard noted that we are almost at the end of a 100-year debt cycle, which might have started well, but has now gotten way out of hand. This chart, showing the growth trajectory of the United States GDP and the almost parabolic growth of the country's debt, shows exactly why we need that transition to sound money as quickly as possible. Let's get back to the interview as Lepard further discusses the need for a sound money standard and some of the consequences of the United States piling debts.
I mean, we're seeing a 100-year debt cycle wrapping itself up. And, it's a little frustrating because it's not quite fast enough for guys like you and me. I mean, I want it to happen instantly so we can get to the other side, so we can have a sound money system, so my kids and grandkids will live in a much better world. But, if you study history, unfortunately, these transitions can take years and sometimes a decade or two. And I think this one really started in 2008. It kind of started in 2000. It got rolling in 2008. And now we're really rolling. I mean, we can all look at the chart of M2 growth or US debt growth or whatever it might be. I mean, we're in it now. We're not going back. So this thing's going to run to its natural conclusion. And, the bright side, the optimistic side of the fact that the money is broken is that it's become so obvious and the math is so relenting that we are going to have a complete breakdown of the system, and we're going to be forced into doing what's right. I mean, people don't, the average people in power don't naturally want to do what's right because they benefit from the way the system is set up. They love it this way. They're getting rich. But the rest of us know that it's wrong, and we know that it's broken. And all we got to do is opt out of their system and save in sound currencies. And eventually their system will collapse, just the way the Soviet Union collapsed. And so when that happens, people will be screaming for sound money again, and we will emerge on a sound money standard, and the world will be a much better place, in my opinion. So that's kind of a long-winded answer, but it really is, to me, in the latter part of my life, I'm trying to do my job, for my investors and myself, but I also would like to have a legacy of standing up for what I believe, something I see very clearly that's wrong, and something that I see very clearly that needs to be set right. And if we do set it right, your generation, my kids' generation, my grandkids' generation, I don't have any yet, but hopefully I will, is going to have a much better future. So what happens with debt is that in the early days of an economic system, people start taking on debt and they use it to do productive things. I mean, debt in and of itself is not inherently bad. I mean, if you borrow money and you use that money to invest in something that creates economic value that's over and above the cost of the investment and provides a return in excess of the cost of the debt, that's good debt. That's the debt you want to have. You're borrowing from the future to increase your productivity so that you'll have more, with less. And that's how all these cycles start out. And that's where, the US and a lot of other countries were, earlier in the century a couple times. I mean, there was a slight blip when we had World War II and took on a ton of debt, but we worked our way out of that. And, so maybe go back to the 1950s or so when, US debt to GDP was under 30%. That was most of the debt that was taken on cautiously and for good reason. What happened is that the government and others in power began to realize, and it started with Greenspan in the 80s, it started a little bit with Reagan. They all kind of began to realize that, you could use debt to create economic growth. And, and in the beginning, it was pretty good. I mean, you borrow $1 and you get $2 or $3 worth of growth. Well, now, you borrow $1 and you don't get any growth, or you borrow $1 and you get 30 cents worth of growth. I mean, it's the marginal utility of the debt goes down as you get more and more of it. And what happens is, and there's a chart I use on Twitter, which shows kind of the growth of the U.S. debt burden as against the growth of the GDP. I mean, so debt is used in theory, debt is used to increase productivity, increase output. And if it's done correctly, then these lines track together. You borrow some money, you get more output. You borrow some money. But unfortunately, what happened, and particularly because of the manipulating of interest rates and going off the gold standard in 71, is that we got into a situation where debt became too easy to take on, and we just kept taking on debt. And we're now at the point where we've got so much debt. I mean, the U.S. federal debt is 130% of GDP, and the GDP is what pays the interest on the debt. And we're not getting the kind of GDP growth we need, and yet the debt continues to grow. And so, something's got to give. Either the debt has to fail and become worthless, or we've got to have massive inflation to get GDP to grow so that it can support this level of debt.
In the concluding part of his Fix the Money, Fix the World article, Spetsky states, and I quote, "The fiat toilet paper price of Bitcoin will go up, down, and around in circles in the short term, and if you focus on that, you'll lose your mind. I want you to remember why you're really here. You as Bitcoiners are here as the white blood cells of the network. You are the cyber hornets. Each and every one of us is here with a moral duty. We are here to slay the frauds, the collectivists, the eco-terrorists, and fascists." He ends the article with a perfect one-liner. Buy and save Bitcoin. Together, we will starve the fucking beast. What are your thoughts on Lawrence Lepard and Spetsky's powerful description of the corrupt statists and the urgent need for the soundest money the world has ever had? Please drop your comments and observations in the comments section below. Also, ensure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos like this. Thanks for watching.